sort of include a little bit about that vision.
Yes, no, thank you very much for the invitation, and just really enjoyed the previous remarks. I think what I'd like to do is I do want to talk about how we finance these programs. Like, we have to address the issue of the macroeconomics of these policies, because at the end of the day, we want them to do what we ask them to do. And so I've been working a lot on the job guarantee, but my interest in the program is really to rethink this program as an institutional vehicle for achieving certain socioeconomic objective. And so I come to the table as a friend of the basic income because we share so many goals. I also come as a friendly critic of the basic income, and a very particular basic income proposal, just from the point of view of my macroeconomic training and my work on public financing. So the few main points that I want to make are the following: that the job guarantee actually ends up fulfilling the objectives that the basic income has, and the basic income, as defined in the literature, the pure proposal actually has significant drawbacks, and it doesn't really provide income security. So that's the argument I want to run through. Now, I need to qualify this. I've been talking to friends from the basic income guarantee networks from academia for the last 15, 20 years, and we've been engaged in this dialogue. And the issue is, how do we eliminate economic insecurity? But also, my interest is, how do we build a road to participation? So, which is the model? What do we want from the basic income? What is the program that we're going to envision? The program that I've been critical of is the one that is permanent, that is universal, that is unconditional, and that provides living standard income to anyone, rich or poor. Okay, so I'm literally talking about the program that will provide, I don't know, $20,000 a year to every citizen in the United States. I sympathize with the motivation behind it, but I think the macroeconomics will work against the model. Okay, so in part of my work, I study monetary systems, and one of the things that I'm interested in is to talk about government spending by using the correct, quote-unquote, paradigm. We can't buy into the neoliberal economic theory of governments being short of financial resources and they can't achieve their objectives. The very, very basic premise, and this alone is a whole topic of discussion that is, it takes a while to flesh out, but the very basic premise is that modern economies are fiat economies. They use fiat currencies. And in modern economies, the fiat currency is a public monopoly. It's a basic, simple public monopoly. So the very argument that the government cannot fund a policy priority doesn't make sense, even on the face of it. Whenever there's a policy priority, governments that have sovereign control over their own currencies always achieve them. We have institutions like the Treasury and the Fed that coordinate and make whatever is necessary to finance those programs. So in other words, financing for the government, which is the monopoly issuer of the currency, is never a problem. Now, a lot of people are saying, what are you saying? Are you just saying we roll on the printing presses and let's just spend? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the way government spends is spent in its own resource. Right? You and I have to earn the dollar. States have to tax the dollar. The federal government does not. The federal government provides the dollar. So that alone takes a while to sort of absorb, and the implications of this. But we need to talk about federal funding and the proper way. So the good news is that we can fund the programs. Right? Right, that's the good news. The financing is not the question. The bad news is that we have a currency system that's a fiat currency system, where we have to worry about what that currency can buy. What's the value of that currency? And so policy then has to think about how government provides that currency so that it doesn't erode its value. Okay, so the simplest way that I can explain this is that basic income, just the policy of sending everybody a check in the mail for $20,000, very easy policy, kind of like Social Security, right? It's very easy, but that alone provides money for nothing, right, in and of itself. And I know I don't want to use sort of the neoliberal, frames that, we don't value human life. I really don't mean that. What I mean is that normally currency is provided in exchange for real goods and services. And the public spending, in a sense, sets a conversion rate, if you will, between what the currency can buy and the stuff that is produced out there in the public and the private sector. Okay? So the basic distinction between these two policies is that in one instance, the money is quite literally free. In the other, it is in exchange for something. And what is that something? So that's where I'm very interested in talking about what do we want for that money, right? The job guarantee, by providing a wage, a $10 wage, let's say, you can say that, every dollar is what, six minutes of work or something like that, right? So in a sense, you're situating the power of the currency in labor power. And I think that's a powerful thing, that you are, you know what your money is worth exactly, of 6 minutes of socially useful work. And that's what the job guarantee connects these two things. All of the objectives of the basic income guarantee, of the provisioning of the inadequate public resources and services, etc. The job guarantee can do that by anchoring the value in the currency in people. So I have an article that makes the case that the pure version of the basic income guarantee can be inflationary and potentially even hyperinflationary, which really is a disservice to precisely the people that we're trying to help. Part of the issue is opting out of the labor market, right? That's one of the objectives. But at the same time, the decommodification of labor is not a sufficient condition, not even necessary, I think, for the erosion of capitalism. And we're still embedded in a capitalist system within which we have to buy things. And so what ends up happening is that, many of us would opt out, but we will still, in one way or another, have to consume with that basic income. And you could see how, without changing the current power relations, production power relationships, you can have firms simply raise prices and extract part of that basic income in the form of profit. So what I worry is that what would the basic income policy do? If people are opting out, if supply is shrinking, but demand has increased because we all have now more purchasing power, right? That in and of itself should cause inflation. Okay. If, however, the employer has to coax people back into the labor market, right? All of these, fast food workers now are getting $20,000 a check. Why would they leave their kids, and go to work instead of stay at home, right? So you could potentially have this mass exodus, which is what we want. But at the same time, you've reduced supply. So if the employer wants to coax them back into the labor market, you have to increase wages, which is a good thing. And maybe you have to increase wages and add benefits because, you have to beat that $20,000 income, right? But then your hamburger is not going to be $3, it's going to be $30. So suddenly the income that we determined will give you your standard of living doesn't buy you the standard of living. Things are more expensive for rent, for food, and other stuff. So the basic income has not guaranteed you the minimum life. And we as policy, committed to this policy, have to increase the basic income. So now the basic income is $25,000, maybe $30,000. So now the $30,000 bad jobs are experiencing this process. So in a sense, it's doing what we wanted to do, like eliminate bad jobs and have firms kind of increase wages, but it's doing it by a mechanism that erodes the purchasing power of the basic income. So you can have like a constant vicious spiral that is like a never-ending catch-up game. How do we deal with inflation in the modern world? Modern economies keep unemployment. They use unemployment to fight inflation. Essentially, they reduce people's income, they keep them hungry so they can't buy the stuff, okay? Now, we don't want that. And what unemployment does is a counter-cyclical problem. When there is inflationary pressures, right, we lay off a lot of people. When there are deflationary pressures, we try to hire people, we give them unemployment insurance, right, just to keep them alive, right? So there is a counter-cyclical spending mechanism that tames inflation. The job guarantee has this virtue that's the counter-cyclical spending. That when the economy is not doing well and people have lost even their good private sector jobs, they go in the public sector program where they get that income, but they are producing socially useful output. So I'll get to that point. So when the economy is shrinking, the job guarantee is expanding. When the economy is expanding, the job guarantee could be shrinking because people are moving to better paid jobs as the private sector demands those people. So you have a counter-cyclical mechanism, taming mechanism of inflation that does not exist in the basic income. So I don't want to be too technical into that stuff, but I think that these two aspects are quite important in the way these programs function. So to me, it is not at all a problem for us to marry the two proposals where we can say, here is an institution that values labor, that values social useful work, environmentally friendly jobs, and here's a program that puts the social motive ahead of the profit motive. And we will guarantee you a living income for that job. Are you ready and willing to work? Would you like income for the public purpose? Here it is. I recognize that not everybody can participate in this program, and there has to be some sort of income support for people for one reason or another cannot participate. And we may value those kinds of activities. Policy could explicitly state, okay, we want to support stay-at-home moms, and therefore we will provide unconditional income. They don't have to come and earn, right, their wage in a sense. So we can recognize that certain groups of people will not want to work or should not work, and complement the employment program or the income from socially useful work with income that is guaranteed. So basically, I just want to, there are a lot of things that I want us to discuss here, but I do see job guarantee as that institution. It's that vehicle that brings people together. It is that vehicle that is attempting to fill social need, to begin building what is a very eroded social fabric in the United States, quite frankly, right? There are so many things that need to be done, and there are so many people that can do them. And so the job guarantee is the coordinating mechanism. It also recognizes work versus leisure. It kind of sets the standard of what a good job is. And the private sector has to match the pay package, the leisure, the vacation package. And the same dynamic we then get to experience with private sectors meeting or rather losing their workers from bad jobs because there is a public option of a good job. And finally, I just want to emphasize that last point is that you have to change property rights. If you want to, if that's the issue, if the issue is capitalism, you have to change property rights. It's not just allowing people not to work is not going to do anything if property rights are not changed. Capital is consolidated, it's concentrated, market power has been determined. I think that people would be marginalized if there aren't other enormous reforms to undermine capitalism. That's the goal. But the job guarantee can create wealth and assets for people. You can use your cooperatives, you can use whatever other arrangements to create wealth. And I'll stop here. Thank you.